The Peacock Ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers, its emerald walls whispering of grandeur. Yet, tonight, a chill hung heavier than the velvet drapes. Eleanor Gray, a maid of barely 20, lay lifeless on the polished floor, her apron stained crimson, a glass of shattered crystal beside her. Her wide eyes stared at the gilded ceiling, as if accusing the opulence above. Hercule Poirot, summoned to Peacock Manor, surveyed the scene, his mustache twitching. Whispers of poison swirled among the guests. Lord Ashford's strained courtesy, Lady Beatrice's trembling hands. Who had slipped death into her glass? The answer, Poirot knew, hid in plain sight. Chapter 1. The Arrival at Peacock Manor. The autumn dusk of 1925 darker itself over the English countryside like a velvet shroud, its amber light filtering through the ancient oaks that lined the drive to Peacock Manor. The air carried the crisp bite of fallen leaves, and a faint mist curled around the tires of the sleek black Daimler that bore Hercule Poirot toward his latest enigma. The manor loomed ahead, its Georgian facade a study in elegance, with ivy clinging to its stone walls like whispered secrets. Yet, as the car crunched to a halt on the gravel, Poirot's sharp eyes noted an unease in the scene, a flicker of movement behind a curtain, a gardener's rake abandoned mid-task. Something was amiss. Inspector Japp awaited him at the grand entrance, his overcoat flapping in the evening breeze. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "It's a bad business, this. A maid, Eleanor Gray, barely 20, found dead in the ballroom. Poison, we think. Cyanide from the smell. Poor girl didn't have a chance." Japp's brow furrowed, his usual bluster tempered by the weight of the crime. Poirot, adjusting his impeccable Homburg hat, merely nodded, his mustache twitching as his mind began its silent dance. "Take me to the scene, mon ami," Poirot said, his Belgian accent confirmed Japp's suspicion. Cyanide, swift and merciless. Her face, though pale in death, retained a youthful beauty. High cheekbones, a delicate nose, lips parted as if to speak. Her hands, calloused from labor, clutched at nothing. Poirot's gaze swept the room, the long mahogany table set for a dinner that never occurred, the velvet drapes heavy with dust, the fireplace cold despite the autumn chill. A single glass shard glinting near a table leg caught his eye. "Curieux," he whispered, filing the detail away. Lord Reginald Ashford, the manor's patriarch, approached, his tailored suit immaculate, but his face etched with strain. A man in his 50s, his silver hair and rigid posture spoke of authority, yet his handshake was clammy, his eyes darting to the body and away. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, voice clipped, "this is a tragedy. Eleanor was dutiful. Unremarkable, really. I can't fathom why anyone would do this." His words were polite, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in his tone, the way his fingers flexed as if resisting a confession. Beside him, Lady Beatrice Ashford hovered, her elegance marred by unease. Her auburn hair was swept into a chignon, and her pearl necklace gleamed against her silk gown. But her hands twisted the pearls with nervous energy. "We're all in shock," she said, her voice soft yet brittle. "Eleanor was quiet, efficient. I barely knew her." Her eyes avoided the body, fixing instead on a portrait above the fireplace. A stern woman in Victorian dress, her gaze as piercing as Eleanor's lifeless stare. Poirot's gray cells stirred, Why such detachment from a death in their home? The household staff lingered at the ballroom's edges, their whispers a low hum. Victor Crane, the butler, stood tall and composed, his dark eyes sharp and his smile disarming, though Poirot noted mud caked on his otherwise polished shoes. Clara Henshaw, the housekeeper, a woman of severe countenance and graying hair, clutched a handkerchief, her lips pursed in disapproval. That girl was outside. Poirot questioned each suspect briefly, his tone polite but probing. Lord Reginald spoke of a quiet evening disrupted by Eleanor's collapse. She served the wine, then fell, he said, his voice faltering. Lady Beatrice claimed to have been in her room, preparing for dinner. Victor admitted to being in the pantry, polishing silver. Clara insisted she was overseeing the kitchen staff. Dr. Everett, flustered, said he'd been in the library, reviewing medical journals. Each answer was plausible, yet Poirot sensed gaps, half-truths veiled in courtesy. He returned to Eleanor's body, studying the crimson stain on her apron. The wine, he suspected, was the key. Cyanide required access, intent, and opportunity. Who among these polished figures harbored such malice? Lord Reginald's financial strain was rumored. Had Eleanor stumbled upon a secret? Lady Beatrice's nervous hands suggested hidden guilt. Victor's charm could mask darker motives. Clara's bitterness hinted at resentment. Dr. Everett's medical knowledge made him a candidate for poison. Poirot's mind spun, weaving threads into a tapestry yet incomplete. A maid, trembling, approached Jap, whispering of a missing item. A sapphire brooch, entrusted to Eleanor that morning. It was Lady Beatrice's, she said, glancing nervously at her mistress. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A brooch, you say? And where was it last seen? The maid faltered. In the ballroom, sir. Eleanor was to clean it. Lady Beatrice paled, her fingers tightening on her pearls. It's a family heirloom, she said. I assumed it was misplaced. Poirot smiled faintly. A missing jewel, a dead maid. Coincidence or design? He examined the ballroom's edges, noting a faint scuff on the floor near the drapes. Kneeling, he found a single pearl, small and unremarkable, half hidden beneath the fabric. Interessant, he murmured, pocketing it discreetly. The pearl matched Lady Beatrice's necklace, poised near the velvet drapes where a shadow had flickered moments before, turned sharply, his mustache quivering with alertness. Inspector Jap, already barking orders to his constables, gestured for Poirot to follow. Trouble never comes alone, eh, Poirot? He muttered, his boots thudding on the polished floor as they hastened toward the source. The 1920s night pressed against the manor's windows, the mist outside thickening as if to shroud its secrets. Poirot's gray cells hummed. Eleanor Gray's death was but the first note in a sinister symphony. The servants' quarters, tucked behind the manor's grand staircase, were a stark contrast to the opulent ballroom. Narrow corridors, lit by flickering gas lamps, smelled of wax and damp linen. A cluster of maids huddled near a door, their faces pale, their whispers frantic. At their center stood Mary, a young scullery maid, her hands trembling as she clutched a dustpan. "It's gone, sir," she cried to Jap, her voice breaking. "Eleanor's diary. It was in her room, and now it's vanished." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind seizing the detail. A diary, he knew, was no mere trifle. It was a window into the victim's soul, and someone had ensured it remained closed. "Show me, mademoiselle," Poirot said, his tone calm but commanding. Mary led them to a cramped room, its single window overlooking the manor's fog-draped gardens. A narrow bed, a chipped washstand, and a small wooden drawer comprised Eleanor's world. The drawer stood ajar, its contents, letters, a hairpin, a faded ribbon, scattered as if rifled through in haste. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the drawer's edge. No dust disturbed, no scratches on the wood. The theft was recent, he murmured, and deliberate. Japp scratched his head. But why a diary? What could a maid write that's worth stealing? Poirot's gaze swept the room, cataloging every detail. A torn photograph half hidden under the bed, a faint trace of lavender perfume, a single candle. Discomfort. Lady Beatrice Ashford stood near the fireplace, her silk gown shimmering, her pearl necklace a constant focus of her nervous fingers. "I barely knew the girl," she said, her voice soft but strained. "She served, she cleaned. I had no cause to notice her." Her eyes darted to the portrait above the mantel, a woman with Beatrice's auburn hair, her expression severe. Poirot's gray cells stirred. Was Beatrice hiding a connection to Eleanor, or merely shielding her own anxieties? Victor Crane, the butler, leaned against a bookcase, his charm undimmed by the grim occasion. His dark eyes met Poirot's with a disarming smile. But the mud on his polished shoes, noticed earlier in the ballroom, spoke of nocturnal wanderings. "Eleanor was a good lass," he said smoothly. "Always scribbling in that diary of hers, late at night. I saw her once by the pantry." His tone was too casual, Poirot thought, as if practiced. A flirtation, perhaps, or something darker. Clara Henshaw, the housekeeper, stood ramrod straight, her graying hair pulled into a severe bun. Her lips curled as she spoke of Eleanor. "Impudent girl," she muttered. "Always poking where she didn't belong, asking questions, snooping." Her handkerchief twisted in her hands, her resentment palpable. Poirot noted her access to the household stores. Could she have procured cyanide? Her bitterness suggested a motive, but was it enough for murder? Dr. Lionel Everett, the visiting physician, hovered near the door, his medical bag clutched like a shield. His spectacles glinted as he shifted uncomfortably. "I only arrived yesterday," he said, his voice high with nerves. "I barely saw the girl before she was gone." His fingers fumbled with his bag, and Poirot's eyes lingered on it. A doctor's tools included poisons, did they not? But what motive could a stranger have? Poirot paced the room, his step. Poirot's eyebrow rose. "Thief, madam? I mentioned no theft." Beatrice flushed, her fingers stilling on her pearls. "I meant the brooch. The maids whispered about it." Poirot nodded, filing away her slip. The sapphire brooch, missing since Eleanor's death, was no mere trinket. Its absence, like the diaries, suggested a deeper game. He questioned Dr. Everett next. "You are a physician, monsieur. Cyanide. It is not common in a household, non?" Everett paled, his spectacles slipping. "I carry no such thing. My bag holds only remedies." Poirot smiled faintly. "Of course. But remedies, they can be versatile." Everett's fidgeting intensified, and Poirot marked him as one to watch. The fire cast long shadows dancing across the suspects' faces, each a mask of secrets. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together fragments: the missing diary, the torn photograph, the brooch, the mud on Victor's shoes. Eleanor had been no ordinary maid. She had seen or heard something worth killing for. Was it Lord Reginald's financial strain, rumored in London circles? Lady Beatrice's guarded demeanor hinted at personal shame. Victor's charm could conceal a predator's heart. Clara's resentment burned like a slow fuse. Everett's presence, so convenient, felt staged. Poirot returned to the diary's theft. Who had access to Eleanor's room? He asked Japp. The inspector consulted his notes. Any of the staff, really. The family, too, though they rarely venture there. Poirot nodded, his gaze lingering on Clara. Madame Henshaw, you oversee the servants' quarters, no? Did you see anyone near Eleanor's room today? Clara's eyes flashed. I was in the kitchen all morning. I saw nothing. Her defiance, Poirot noted, was too emphatic. He addressed the group. The diary. It is the key. It holds what Eleanor knew and what her killer fears. I urge you, speak now, before the truth finds you. Silence answered, broken only by toward the sound, his mustache bristling with alertness. Inspector Japp, already halfway to the door, barked, "Stay here, all of you," to the assembled suspects. But their faces, Lord Reginald's clenched jaw, Lady Beatrice's trembling hands, Victor's too calm smile, Clara's scowl, Dr. Everett's nervous fidgeting, betrayed a collective unease. Poirot followed Japp, his polished shoes clicking on the oak floors, his gray cells humming. The manor he sensed was a stage, and each crash or scream a cue in a deadly performance. The ballroom's chandeliers cast fractured light across the emerald walls, illuminating a new scene of chaos. A crystal decanter lay shattered on the parquet, its amber contents pooling beside the spot where Eleanor Gray's body had been removed. A constable stood guard, his face pale. It just fell, sir, he stammered to Japp. From that table, all on its own. Poirot's eyes narrowed, scanning the table's edge. No marks, no disturbance. Rien ne tombe sans raison, he murmured. Nothing falls without reason. He knelt, noting a faint smear of mud near the table leg, matching the caked dirt on Victor's shoes. A deliberate act, or another distraction? The word affair burned in his mind. Eleanor's secret was unraveling, and someone sought to bury it. Poirot returned to the servants' quarters, determined to investigate the missing diary. The cramped room, still heavy with the scent of lavender, felt violated by the theft. Mary, the scullery maid, hovered nearby, wringing her hands. It was in that drawer, sir, she whispered, pointing to the now empty compartment. Eleanor wrote in it every night. I saw her, by candlelight. Poirot's gaze swept the room anew. The torn photograph, now in his pocket, showed Eleanor beside a blurred figure. The hairpin, plain but bent. The ribbon, faded but neatly folded. He lifted the candle stub, its wax dripped in uneven patterns. She wrote late, you say. And who else knew of this diary? Mary hesitated. Perhaps this summer. He pocketed it again, determined to identify the figure. The lavender scent, faint but persistent, tugged at his memory. Had he smelled it elsewhere? Lady Beatrice's perfume, perhaps? The threads of the mystery were tangling, but Poirot's gray cells began to weave them into order. Back in the drawing room, he summoned the suspects, their faces now etched with fatigue and fear. The fire had died to embers, casting long shadows that danced like specters. Poirot held up the scrap of paper, its single word, affair, gleaming in the dim light. This, mes amis, was found in Eleanor's room. She knew of a secret, one worth killing for. Who among you has something to hide? The room tensed, eyes darting. Lord Reginald's voice was sharp. Preposterous! A maid's scribblings mean nothing. But his fingers gripped his chair, knuckles white. Lady Beatrice, standing by the portrait, flinched at the word. An affair? She whispered, her pearls clicking as her hands trembled. I know nothing of such nonsense. Poirot's eyes locked on hers. Yet you mentioned the sapphire brooch, madame, before I spoke of it. Why? She paled, her voice faltering. It's my mother's heirloom. I thought Eleanor might have taken it. Poirot nodded, noting her unease. The brooch, missing since Eleanor's death, was a recurring thread, greed, perhaps, or a red herring to distract from the true motive. Victor Crane leaned forward, his smile undimmed. Eleanor was a dreamer, Monsieur Poirot. She wrote stories, not secrets. That word could mean anything. His voice was smooth, but Poirot caught a flicker of calculation in his eyes. And you, monsieur, saw her writing. Did you read her diary? Victor's smile tightened. Never. I respected her privacy. Poirot's gaze lingered on the mud-stained shoes. Yet you wandered the gardens at night, no? The mud. It tells its own story. Clara Henshaw's shattered decanter. The diary was the key, he was certain. It held what Eleanor knew, and what her killer feared. But was it stolen by the murderer, or another seeking to protect their own secret? Lord Reginald's financial strain, whispered in London clubs, suggested a motive. Had Eleanor discovered a scheme? Lady Beatrice's nervous demeanor hinted at personal shame, perhaps tied to the mysterious figure in the photograph. Victor's charm and muddy shoes pointed to hidden actions. Clara's resentment could mask a deeper grudge. Everett's medical knowledge made him a convenient suspect, but his nervousness felt genuine. He addressed the group, his voice steady. Eleanor Gray was no mere maid. She observed, she wrote, she knew. Her diary is gone, but its secrets linger. I ask you, where were you when it was taken? Silence answered, broken by the wind rattling the windows. Lord Reginald claimed to have been in his study reviewing accounts. Lady Beatrice said she was in her boudoir, resting. Victor insisted he was polishing silver in the pantry. Clara swore she was in the kitchen. Everett, flustered, cited the library. Each alibi was plausible, yet Poirot sensed cracks. None had witnesses to confirm their claims. He returned to the servants' quarters, determined to find more clues. The lavender scent lingered, stronger near the bed. Kneeling, he lifted the mattress, finding nothing but dust. But the floorboard beneath creaked under his weight. With Jap's help, he pried it loose, revealing a small hollow. Inside lay a single hairpin, bent as if used to pick a lock, and a faint trace of blue thread. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered. The thread matched the sapphire brooch's setting described by the maids. Had Eleanor hidden it here, or was it planted to mislead? The photograph's blurred figure haunted him. He studied it again, noting the rose garden's backdrop. A ground within its walls. Inspector Japp, already halfway to the stables to investigate the newly discovered locket, hesitated, his hand on his revolver. "What now, Poirot?" he muttered, his breath visible in the chilly corridor. Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted slightly, raised a gloved hand for silence. "The manner it speaks, mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent sharp. "Let us first see this locket, then we chase the ghosts." The suspects, still gathered in the drawing room, exchanged uneasy glances as Poirot and Japp moved toward the stables. The word affair from Eleanor Gray's hidden scrap burning in Poirot's mind. The stables, a low stone building behind the manor, smelled of hay and leather, the air thick with the musk of horses. A lantern swung from a beam, casting shadows that danced like specters. The groundskeeper, a wiry man named Tom, stood by a stall, clutching a silver locket engraved with E.G. His hands trembled as he handed it to Japp. "Found it in the hay, sir, near the back," he said, his voice low. "Tucked deep, like someone hid it." Poirot opened the locket, revealing a tiny photograph. Eleanor, smiling, beside a figure whose face was obscured by a smudge, the same blurred figure from the torn photograph in her room. "Culia," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing. The locket's chain was broken, its clasp bent as if torn off in haste. A clue, or another carefully placed distraction? Poirot questioned Tom, his tone gentle but probing. "You saw Eleanor here, no? Arguing with someone?" Tom nodded, his eyes darting to the manor. "Aye, with Mrs. Henshaw a week back. Heated it was. Eleanor was shouting about fairness and secrets." Clara looked fit to burst. Poirot's mustache twitched. Clara Henshaw's bitterness was a recurring thread. Did it weave into murder? He pocketed the locket, noting its faint lavender scent, matching the perfume in Eleanor's room. Was it Lady Beatrice's or a maid's mimicry? The web of scandal tightened, but its center velvet drapes. Clara's lips thinned. "I told you she was meddlesome," she snapped. "That argument was about her laziness, nothing more." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Yet you spoke of secrets, no? What did Eleanor know?" Clara's handkerchief twisted tighter, her eyes flashing defiance. Lord Reginald cleared his throat, his voice strained. "This is absurd, Poirot. A maid's locket means nothing. My wife and I have no secrets." But his eyes flicked to Beatrice, who looked away, her face pale. Poirot turned to her. "Madame, you recognize this sapphire brooch's importance. This locket, does it stir a memory?" Beatrice's voice was barely a whisper. "It's familiar, but I don't know why." Her fingers stilled on her pearls, and Poirot noted the lie in her hesitation. The photograph's blurred figure, was it Beatrice? Or someone she protected? Victor Crane leaned forward, his smile disarming. "Eleanor was fond of trinkets," he said smoothly. "She showed me that locket once, said it was a gift." Poirot's eyebrow rose. "A gift, monsieur? From whom?" Victor shrugged, his eyes flickering. "She didn't say. A sweetheart, maybe." The mud on his shoes, Poirot recalled, suggested nocturnal wanderings, perhaps to the stables, to hide the locket, or to retrieve it. Dr. Everett, fidgeting, spoke up. "I never saw that locket. I barely knew the girl." His spectacles slipped, his voice high with nerves. Poirot's gaze lingered on his medical bag. "Yet you treated her, doctor. For fainting spells, no? Unusual for a young woman." Everett stammered. "Simple fatigue, nothing more. I prescribed rest." Poirot nodded, filing away the detail. Cyanide could be disguised as medicine, and Everett's bag held possibilities. Poirot paced, his mind weaving the clues. The locket, the diary's theft, the word affair, the torn photograph, the shattered decanter. Eleanor had stumbled upon a scandal, he was certain. Romantic, financial, or from night? Victor's smile faltered. "I checked the horses, that's all. My shoes got muddy. Nothing sinister." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. The mud matched the stable's earth, and the locket's hiding place suggested intent. Was Victor a lover, a conspirator, or a pawn? He questioned Lady Beatrice privately, away from the others' prying eyes. "Madame, the locket's photograph. Does it show you?" Her eyes widened, her pearls clicking furiously. "No, I don't know. It's blurred." Poirot pressed gently. "The brooch, the locket, the word affair. They point to a secret. What do you fear?" Beatrice's voice broke. "I fear scandal, Monsieur Poirot. The manor, our name, it's all we have." Her admission was a crack in her facade. But was it guilt or desperation? Poirot returned to the ballroom, recreating Eleanor's final moments. The shattered decanter, like the glass beside her body, suggested a struggle, or a staged one. He examined the table, finding a faint ring where the decanter had stood, undisturbed until its fall. The mud smear nearby pointed to Victor, but the absence of fingerprints puzzled him. A red herring, perhaps, to distract from the true method of poison. The wine, he suspected, was the key. Cyanide in her glass, not the decanter. But who had poured it? He summoned the maids, questioning them about the brooch. "It was Lady Beatrice's," Mary confirmed. "Given to Eleanor to polish that morning. She was proud of the task." Poirot's mind raced. The brooch, the locket, the diary, all connected to Eleanor's knowledge. Had she seen the brooch being sold or stolen? Or was it a lover's gift tied to the affair? The photograph's blurred figure haunted him. Was it Victor, Beatrice, or another? As the clock struck 10, Tom, the groundskeeper, approached, his face grim. "Monsieur Poirot, I saw something odd last night in the road." Spectacles slipped. Poirot's gray cells whirred. The word affair from Eleanor Gray's scrap and the locket's blurred photograph weaving a tapestry of scandal. The bloodied knife, he sensed, was another thread in this deadly puzzle. The kitchen, a cavernous space of copper pots and scrubbed oak, buzzed with panic. Mary, the scullery maid, stood trembling by the counter, pointing to a carving knife, its blade streaked with crimson. "It wasn't there an hour ago, sir," she cried to Jap. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over the knife. The blood was fresh, not yet congealed, but the blade bore no fingerprints, a deliberate wipe, he deduced. "This is no accident," he murmured, his Belgian accent clipping each word. "The killer plays a game, no? To frighten or to mislead." Jap ordered the knife bagged, his brow furrowed. "But whose blood, Poirot? Another victim?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or a red herring, to cloud the truth." He dispatched a constable to check the manor's occupants, ensuring no one else was harmed. His mind returned to the rose garden, where Tom, the groundskeeper, had reported a glint of blue, possibly the sapphire brooch. "We must search the garden, Inspector," Poirot said, his tone firm. "The brooch. It is no mere trinket. It links to Eleanor's death." Japp nodded, leaving a constable to guard the kitchen. As they stepped into the night, the fog curled around them, the manor's windows glowing like watchful eyes. The rose garden, a maze of thorny bushes and moonlit paths, lay silent, its fountain's trickle the only sound. Poirot's flashlight swept the ground, its beam catching a glint near the fountain's base. He knelt, brushing aside damp earth to reveal the sapphire brooch, its clasp broken, its blue stone winking in the light. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, holding it aloft. The brooch matched Mary's description, Lady Beatrice's heirloom, entrusted to Eleanor to polish. Its placement, half buried, felt staged, a clue too conveniently found. "A distraction, perhaps," Poirot said to Japp, "to lead us fear." The chandeliers cast harsh light, exposing every flinch. Poirot held up the brooch, its sapphire gleaming. "This, mes amis, was found in the rose garden. It was Eleanor's task to polish it, yet it lay hidden. Who placed it there?" Lady Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her pearls. "It's mine," she whispered, "but I thought it lost." Poirot's eyes locked on hers. "Lost, madame? Or hidden, to protect a secret?" Lord Reginald's voice was sharp. "This is nonsense, Poirot. The brooch is valuable, yes, but Eleanor was no thief." His knuckles whitened on his cane, betraying strain. Poirot noted his rumored debts. Could the brooch's sale save the manor? "And you, milord, did you entrust it to Eleanor?" Reginald hesitated. "I left such matters to Beatrice." His evasion was a crack in his authority, and Poirot filed it away. Victor Crane, leaning against a pillar, flashed his disarming smile. "Eleanor showed me the brooch that morning," he said smoothly. "She was proud to handle it." Poirot's gaze lingered on his muddy shoes. "And you, monsieur, were in the garden last night, no? The mud, it tells a story." Victor's smile tightened. "Just a walk, Monsieur Poirot. The stables, the garden. I like the night air." His nonchalance, Poirot thought, masked calculation. Clara Henshaw's scowl deepened as she spoke. That girl was trouble, always handling things above her station. The brooch, the locket, she had no business with them. Poirot turned to her. "You argued with Eleanor in the stables, Madame Henshaw. About secrets, perhaps?" Clara's handkerchief twisted. "She was insolent, nothing more. I don't know about any brooch." Her bitterness, Poirot noted, could fuel murder. But her access to poison was uncertain. Dr. Lionel Everett, clutching his medical bag, stammered, "I never saw that brooch. I'm a guest, not part of this intrigue." Poirot's eyebrow flashed. She was a climber, always currying favor with the mistress. "I kept order, that's all." Poirot nodded, noting her hostility. Had Eleanor overheard something in Clara's domain? The kitchen, the stores, where poison might be found? To Victor he said, "Your flirtations with Eleanor, they were known. Was she your affair?" Victor laughed, but it was strained. "A bit of fun, nothing serious. She was sweet, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Yet you hid the locket, perhaps the brooch. Why?" Victor's smile vanished. "I hid nothing. You're fishing, monsieur." Poirot's gray cells stirred. The mud, the locket, the garden, all pointed to Victor's involvement. Lady Beatrice, questioned privately, crumbled under Poirot's gaze. "The brooch, it was my mother's," she whispered. "Eleanor was careful with it. I don't know how it ended up in the garden." Her eyes filled with tears, but Poirot sensed a half-truth. "And the locket, madame? Its photograph? Does it show you?" Beatrice shook her head, her pearls clicking. "I don't know. It's blurred." Her fear, Poirot thought, was not of guilt but of exposure. He returned to the ballroom's table, picturing Eleanor's final moments. The wine glass, shattered, bore no fingerprints, but the stain on her apron was uneven, suggesting a spill before her fall. The cyanide, he deduced, was in her drink, administered by someone close. The brooch, the locket, the knife, all distractions, yet each held a fragment of truth. The word affair suggested a romantic scandal, but the brooch pointed to greed. Was it both? As midnight neared, a maid approached, her voice trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, I heard something odd. Dr. Everett on the telephone, arguing. He sounded scared." Poirot's pulse quickened, but he maintained his composure. "Merci, mademoiselle. Where is this telephone?" She pointed to the library, and Poirot's gray cells spun faster. The doctor's fear, the brooch's disgust. Complex tapestry. The latest disturbance, he sensed, was no accident but another move in the killer's desperate game. Poirot dispatched a constable to the garden, instructing him to secure the scene, then turned toward the library. "The telephone call, Inspector," he said, his Belgian accent crisp. "It may hold the key to Dr. Everett's role." Jap nodded, leading the way through the manor's oak-paneled corridors, where gas lamps flickered like wary sentinels. The library, a sanctuary of leather-bound tomes and mahogany shelves, smelled of wax and old paper. A black telephone sat on a desk, its receiver slightly askew, as if hastily replaced. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Had Everett been interrupted mid-call? Or was this another staged clue? He questioned Mary, the maid who had overheard the call. "Tell me, mademoiselle, what did you hear?" Mary wrung her hands. "He was angry, sir, whispering fast. Something about keeping it quiet and no one must know. He sounded scared, like he was pleading." Poirot's mind seized the detail. Fear suggested guilt, or perhaps blackmail. "And where were you to hear this?" Mary pointed to a servant's passage behind a bookcase. "I was dusting, sir. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." Poirot nodded, filing away her sincerity. The passage, he noted, offered a perfect vantage for spying or planting evidence. He summoned Dr. Everett to the library, the doctor's medical bag still clutched like a talisman. Everett's face was pale, his spectacles fogging with nervous sweat. "Monsieur Poirot, I assure you my call was nothing. A patient, a private matter." His voice cracked, betraying panic. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "A patient, doctor, at midnight, in a manner gripped by murder? You spoke of secrecy, no?" Everett stammered. "It was a colleague, about a case, nothing to do with Eleanor." Poirot's mustache twitched. The ballroom's chandeliers. Holding up the vial's fragment, he said, "This, mes amis, was burned to hide the poison that killed Eleanor Gray." Who had access to such a vial? Silence fell, heavy as the velvet drapes. Lord Reginald's voice was sharp. "This is absurd, Poirot. We're not chemists." But his eyes darted to Everett, betraying suspicion. Poirot noted his rumored debts. The brooch's sale could save the manor, but a vial required access, not wealth. Lady Beatrice, her pearls clicking, whispered, "I know nothing of poisons. I was in my room when Eleanor died." Poirot's eyes locked on hers. "Yet your brooch, madame, was found in the garden, and your perfume lingers on her locket. You knew her secrets, no?" Beatrice paled, her voice faltering. I cared for her, as a maid, nothing more." Her lie, Poirot thought, was a shield, for herself or another. Victor Crane, leaning against a pillar, flashed his charming smile. "Eleanor was careful, Monsieur Poirot. She'd never touch a vial like that." Poirot's gaze lingered on his muddy shoes. "Yet you wandered the garden, monsieur, where the brooch was hidden. And the locket, did you place it in the stables?" Victor's smile tightened. "I told you I liked the night air. I hid nothing." Poirot's gray cells stirred. The mud, the locket, the stables all pointed to Victor's involvement, but as killer or pawn. Clara Henshaw's scowl deepened. That girl was a nuisance, always poking about. If she found a vial, she deserved what she got. Poirot turned to her, his tone gentle but probing. "And you, Madame Henshaw, had access to the kitchen stores. Could cyanide be hidden there?" Clara's handkerchief twisted. "I run a clean house. No poisons in my kitchen." Her defiance, Poirot noted, masked fear. Fear of discovery or of being framed. Poirot paced, weaving the clues. The vial's residue, the locket, the brooch, the word of doctor could hide poison elsewhere. To Victor, he said, "Your flirtations with Eleanor, they were known. Was she your affair?" Victor laughed, but it was strained. "A bit of fun, nothing serious. She was sweet, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Yet your shoes, monsieur, place you in the garden, the stables. What did you hide?" Victor's smile vanished. "Nothing. You're chasing shadows." Poirot's gray cells spun. The mud was no shadow but a solid clue. Lady Beatrice, questioned privately, crumbled under Poirot's gaze. "I knew Eleanor was curious," she whispered. "She asked about the brooch, about my family. I told her to stop." Her eyes filled with tears, but Poirot sensed a half-truth. "And the locket, madame? Its photograph, does it show you?" Beatrice shook her head. "I don't know. It's blurred." Her fear, Poirot thought, was of exposure, not guilt. He returned to the ballroom's fireplace, picturing the vial's destruction. The killer had burned it to hide the cyanide's source, but the fragment survived, a mistake. He questioned the maids about the kitchen stores, learning of a locked cabinet where Clara kept cleaning supplies. Could cyanide be mistaken for something else? He asked Mary. She shook her head. "Mrs. Henshaw checks everything. But Eleanor was in there once looking for polish." Poirot's pulse quickened. Had Eleanor found poison or been lured to it? As 1 a.m. neared, Tom, the groundskeeper, approached, his face grim. "Monsieur Poirot, I found something in the fireplace ashes. A burned letter, half gone." He handed Poirot a charred scrap, its words barely legible. "Meet me. Midnight. Trust no one." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Eleanor's handwriting matching the affair scrap. Had she planned to expose someone or meet her killer? The web was tightening, but one thread remained loose. Chapter 7. The Burned Letter. The scream from the servants' quarters shattered the uneasy calm of Peacock Manor. its echo reverberating through the scream, he sensed, was no mere accident, but another act in the killer's desperate play. The servants' quarters, lit by flickering gas lamps, buzzed with panic. Mary, the scullery maid, stood trembling at the end of the corridor, pointing to a slammed door. "It was Eleanor's room, sir," she gasped to Jap. "I heard someone inside. Then that scream." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he approached the door, his gloved hand testing the handle. "Locked. Force it, Inspector," he said, his Belgian accent sharp. Jap nodded, and the constable shouldered the door open, revealing Eleanor's cramped room, now in disarray. The bed was overturned, the washstand's pitcher shattered, and a faint lavender scent lingered, stronger than before. Poirot's pulse quickened. "Someone searched again," he murmured. "But for what? The diary is gone." He knelt, examining the debris. A single pearl, small and unremarkable, glinted beneath the bed, matching the one he'd found in the ballroom. Lady Beatrice's necklace, he recalled, shed such pearls in her nervous fidgeting. "Curia," he whispered, pocketing it. The lavender scent, identical to that on the locket and brooch, pointed to her, or a deliberate misdirection. He scanned the floor, finding a fresh scratch near the loose floorboard where the hairpin and blue thread had been discovered. "The intruder was careless," he said to Jap. "They sought something Eleanor hid, but they found nothing." Jap scratched his head. "The killer, covering their tracks?" Poirot's smile was faint. "Or another, fearing her secrets. The burned letter's words. Meet me. Midnight. Trust no one," burned in Poirot's mind. Eleanor's handwriting, matching the affair scrap, suggested a clandestine meeting, perhaps with her killer. He returned to the drawing room where the suspects waited, their faces etched with fatigue and fear. The fire had died to embers, casting long shadows that danced like specters. Poirot held up the charred scrap, its words glinting in the dim light. "This, mesdames, know nothing of it." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Yet your perfume, madame, clings to Eleanor's locket, her brooch, her room. And this pearl," he held it up, "matches your necklace." Beatrice paled, her voice faltering. "I dropped it, perhaps, in the ballroom." Poirot's mustache twitched. "You were not there, you said. Why lie?" Her silence was louder than words, and Poirot filed away her fear. Of guilt or exposure? Victor Crane, leaning against a bookcase, flashed his disarming smile. "Eleanor was full of secrets," he said smoothly. "That letter could mean anything, a lover, a friend." Poirot's eyes lingered on his muddy shoes. "And you, monsieur, knew her habits. You wandered the garden, the stables. Did you meet her at midnight?" Victor's smile tightened. "I was asleep, Monsieur Poirot. My shoes got muddy checking the horses." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. The mud, the locket, the brooch all pointed to Victor's involvement. But as killer or pawn? Clara Henshaw's scowl deepened. That girl was trouble, always sneaking about. If she met someone, she brought it on herself. Poirot turned to her, his tone gentle but probing. "You argued with her, Madame Henshaw, about secrets. Did she hear something in your domain, the kitchen, the stores?" Clara's handkerchief twisted. "She was nosy, nothing more. I don't know about any letter." Her bitterness, Poirot thought, could fuel murder, but her access to cyanide was uncertain. Dr. Lionel Everett, clutching his medical bag, stammered, "I never saw that letter. I barely knew her." His spectacles slipped, his voice high with nerves. Poirot's gaze lingered on his bag. Yet your call doctor spoke of secrecy. And your bag, could it hold a vial like the one burned? Everett's face reddened. I told you my bag is clean. That call was about a patient. Poirot waved a hand. We shall see, monsieur. The truth, it waits. Poirot paced, weaving the clue. Voice broke. She asked odd questions about my family. I told her to stop. Her fear, Poirot thought, was of a secret exposed, not necessarily murder. To Victor, he said, Your flirtations with Eleanor, they were known. Was she your affair? Victor laughed, strained. A bit of fun, nothing serious. No midnight meetings. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. Yet your shoes place you in the garden, the stables. What did you hide? Victor's smile vanished. Nothing. You're chasing shadows. Poirot's gray cells spun. The mud was no shadow, but a solid clue. Clara, questioned again, snapped. I caught her near the master's study, listening. She deserved a warning, not death. Poirot pressed. And what did she hear? A financial scheme, perhaps? Clara's eyes flashed. I don't know. She was trouble, that's all. Her defiance masked fear, Poirot noted. Fear of being implicated. Or framed. He returned to the ballroom, picturing Eleanor's final moments. The cyanide, he deduced, was in her wine. Not the decanter or glass. A precise act. The burned vial suggested a medical source, pointing to Everett. But the letter's midnight meeting implicated another. He questioned the maids about the kitchen stores, learning of a locked cabinet where Clara kept supplies. Could cyanide be hidden there? He asked Mary. She shook her head. Mrs. Henshaw checks everything. But Eleanor was in there once, looking for polish. Had Eleanor found poison? Or been lured to it? As 2 a.m. neared, Tom approached, his face grim. Monsieur Poirot, I saw something else. In the stables. A box hidden in the hay. With Eleanor's hairpin. Poirot's pulse quickened. The stables where the locket was found held more secrets. He thanked Tom, his mind racing. The letter, the vial, the locket, the brooch. The killer was desperate. And the manor's shadows were closing in. Chapter 8. The Second Death. The crowd by the faint glow of lanterns as Poirot and Jap raced toward the source of the cry. Near the rose garden's fountain, where the brooch had been found, lay Tom, the groundskeeper, crumpled on the damp grass. His skull bore a brutal wound, blood pooling beneath his head, his eyes staring blankly at the starless sky. A heavy iron rake, its handle slick with blood, lay nearby. Jap cursed under his breath, kneeling to check for a pulse. Dead, Poirot. Bludgeoned, not long ago. Poirot's eyes narrowed, scanning the scene. Tom's hands were dirt-stained, as if he'd been digging, and a faint glint of metal, a key, peeked from his clenched fist. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. He knew too much, non? Poirot examined the key, small and ornate, unlike those for the manor's doors. This, Inspector, unlocks something hidden. Perhaps the box Tom spoke of. He pocketed it, his mind racing. Tom had seen the brooch's glint, argued with Clara, and found the locket. Had he uncovered the killer's secret, only to be silenced? The rake, a tool of his trade, suggested an opportunistic attack. But its placement felt staged, like the brooch and knife. Poirot's gray cells whirred. 2 deaths now, Eleanor's by poison, Tom's by violence. The killer was growing reckless. They returned to the stables where Tom had mentioned a hidden box. In a stall, buried under hay, Poirot found it. A small wooden case, locked, its surface scratched as if pried at. The key fit perfectly, revealing Eleanor's hairpin, a locket matching the one found earlier, and a folded note. The locket held another photograph, this time clearer. Eleanor and Victor Crane, his arm around her, both smiling in the rose garden. The note in Eleanor's hand read, "Victor, we must tell the truth." Poirot's pulse quickened. An affair indeed, he whispered. But whose truth did she mean? He summoned the suspects to the ballroom, emphatic. Lady Beatrice, her pearls clicking, whispered, "Eleanor and Victor? I suspected she was too familiar with him." Her voice broke, but Poirot sensed a lie. "Madame, your perfume clings to her locket, her brooch. Did you know of their affair?" Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "I warned her to stay discreet. I didn't want scandal." Her fear, Poirot noted, was of exposure, not necessarily guilt. Clara Henshaw's scowl deepened. "I told you, that girl was trouble, flirting with Victor, sneaking about. She deserved what she got." Poirot turned to her. "And Tom, Madame Henshaw? He argued with you in the stables. Did he find your secrets?" Clara's handkerchief twisted. "He was nosy like her. I didn't touch him." Her bitterness, Poirot thought, could fuel murder, but her strength to wield a rake was questionable. Dr. Everett, clutching his medical bag, stammered, "I was in the library all night. I know nothing of this." His spectacles slipped, his voice high with panic. Poirot's gaze lingered on his bag. "Yet your call, doctor, spoke of secrecy. Did Tom overhear it?" Everett's face reddened. "It was a private matter, not murder." Poirot waved a hand. "We shall see, monsieur. The truth waits." Poirot paced, weaving the clues. Tom's death, the box, the locket, the note, the brooch, the burned letter, the word affair. Eleanor's affair with Victor was clear, but was it the motive? Tom's death suggested he'd seen something, perhaps the killer hiding the box. Lord Reginald's debts pointed to greed, the brooch a means to save the manor. Beatrice's perfume and warnings to Eleanor hinted at a personal secret. Victor's muddy shoes and the locket placed him at the heart of the affair. Clara's resentment could mask a deeper grudge. Everett's medical knowledge and fearful call made him a suspect, but his panic seemed genuine. He questioned Victor privately. "In the stables too often. I told him to mind his work." Poirot nodded, noting her evasiveness. Had Tom seen Clara with the rake, or the box? Returning to the stables, Poirot examined the box's contents again. The hairpin, bent as if used to pick a lock, suggested Eleanor's cunning. The note's plea for truth pointed to a confrontation, perhaps with the killer. He inspected the locket's photograph, noting Victor's arm around Eleanor, his smile genuine. Was he a heartbroken lover or a manipulator? The stable's hay held no further clues, but the earth outside bore fresh footprints, matching Victor's shoes. "He was here," Poirot murmured to Jap. But for love or murder? Back in the ballroom, Poirot recreated Tom's death. The rake's weight required strength, ruling out Clara unless rage fueled her. Reginald, Victor, or Everett could wield it. But the key in Tom's hand suggested he'd found something worth dying for. Poirot questioned the maids about Tom's habits, learning he often patrolled the grounds at night. He was curious, Mary said, always digging, checking things. Had he dug up the killer's secret? As 3 a.m. neared, a maid approached, her face ashen. Monsieur Poirot, in Mrs. Henshaw's room. They found a glove, bloodied, under her bed. Poirot's pulse quickened, but he maintained his composure. Merci, mademoiselle. Show me. The glove, he suspected, was another planted clue, but it tightened the noose around the killer's neck. Chapter 9. The glove's owner. The guttural moan from the attic, followed by the rhythmic creak of pacing footsteps, pierced the oppressive silence of Peacock Manor, its echo chilling the fog-laden night of 1925. Hercule Poirot, poised to investigate the bloodied glove found in Clara Henshaw's room, froze, his mustache quivering with alertness. Inspector Japp, his revolver drawn, muttered, "What now, Poirot? This place is a nightmare." The constable beside him gripped his truncheon, eyes wide with unease. The suspect, still austere and orderly, reflected her severe demeanor. Beneath the iron bed, a constable pointed to a single leather glove, its cuff stained with dried blood. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over it. The blood was old, not fresh like Tom's, and the glove bore no monogram, its size suggesting a woman's hand. "Curieux," he murmured. "This is no accident, but a plant, no?" He questioned Mary, the maid who found it. "Mademoiselle, when did you last clean this room?" Mary wrung her hands. "Yesterday, sir, before Eleanor's death. No glove was there." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "So, it was placed after the murder, to implicate Madame Henshaw." Japp scratched his head. "But whose blood? Tom's?" Poirot shook his head. "The blood is too old. A red herring, Inspector, to cloud the truth." He tested the glove with a handkerchief, finding no residue but noting a faint lavender scent, matching the locket, the brooch, and Eleanor's room. Lady Beatrice's perfume or another misdirection? Poirot summoned Clara to her room, her face a mask of outrage. "That glove isn't mine," she snapped, her handkerchief twisted into a knot. "Someone's framing me." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Yet you resented Eleanor, Madame Henshaw, and argued with Tom. Did they know your secrets?" Clara's scowl faltered. "I've no secrets. That girl was trouble, and Tom was nosy. But I didn't kill them." Her voice cracked, betraying fear. Poirot noted her limited strength. Could she wield the rake that killed Tom? The glove, he suspected, was planted to shift suspicion. But by whom? He returned to the ballroom, recreating Eleanor's final moments to test his deductions. The shattered glass, the crimson-stained apron, the cyanide's bitter almond scent. All pointed to poison in her wine, not the decanter or knife. The glove's blood, too old for time, perhaps involving the brooch. Reginald's jaw tightened. "My finances are private. They knew nothing." His denial, Poirot thought, was too emphatic, hinting at desperation. Lady Beatrice, her pearls clicking, whispered, "I know nothing of gloves or blood." Her voice trembled, but Poirot sensed a lie. Yet your perfume, madame, links the locket, the brooch, the glove. Did you know Eleanor's secrets? Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. I only warned her to be discreet, for the manor's sake. Her fear, Poirot noted, was of scandal, not necessarily guilt. Victor Crane, leaning against a pillar, flashed a strained smile. Eleanor never mentioned a glove, he said smoothly. Maybe Clara's not as innocent as she claims. Poirot's eyes lingered on his muddy shoes. And you, monsieur, hid the locket and box. Did you plant the glove to shift blame? Victor's smile vanished. I hid nothing but Eleanor's keepsakes, for her sake. Poirot's gray cells stirred. Victor's grief seemed real, but his actions were suspect. Dr. Everett, clutching his medical bag, stammered, I was in the library. I don't know about gloves or murders. His spectacles slipped, his voice high with panic. Poirot's gaze lingered on his bag. Yet your call, doctor, spoke of secrecy. Did Tom overhear something dangerous? Everett's face reddened. It was a private matter, not murder. Poirot waved a hand. We shall see, monsieur. Poirot paced, weaving the clues, the glove, the box, the locket, the burned letter, the brooch, the word affair. Eleanor's affair with Victor was clear, but Tom's death suggested a broader conspiracy. Lord Reginald's debts pointed to greed. The brooch a means to save the manor. Beatrice's perfume and warnings hinted at a personal secret, perhaps tied to the locket's photograph. Victor's muddy shoes and hidden box placed him at the heart of the affair. Clara's resentment could mask a deeper grudge, but the glove's placement seemed close to Victor. She whispered, I warned her to avoid scandal. The glove, I don't know. Her tears fell, but Poirot sensed a half-truth. And the perfume, madame? It links you to her death. Beatrice's voice broke. I visited her room once to talk. That's all. Her sincerity masked something deeper, Poirot thought. He returned to the ballroom, picturing Eleanor's death. The cyanide, he deduced, was in her wine glass, not the decanter, a precise act. The glove's blood, too old for Tom's murder, was a distraction, like the brooch. He tested the wine ring, finding a faint residue, possibly cyanide, but no vial. The burned letter's midnight meeting pointed to a confrontation, perhaps with Victor, or another. He questioned the maids about Clara's stores, learning of a locked cabinet. Could poison be hidden there? He asked Mary. She shook her head. Mrs. Henshaw's strict, but Eleanor was in there looking for polish. Had Eleanor found cyanide, or been lured to it? As 4 a.m. neared, Poirot's deductions tightened. The glove was a frame, the brooch a distraction, the locket a clue to love, the letter a warning. The killer had poisoned Eleanor and bludgeoned Tom to silence their knowledge. He called the suspects to the ballroom, his voice steady. The truth, mes amis, is near. Eleanor knew a secret worth killing for. Tom died for it. Who among you fears exposure? Their silence was deafening, the chandelier's light exposing every flinch. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation. The crash from the manor's study, followed by the rustle of scattering papers, shattered the tense silence of Peacock Manor's ballroom, its echo reverberating through the fog-laden night of 1925. Hercule Poirot, poised to unveil his deductions, turned sharply, his mustache quivering with alertness. Inspector Japp, his revolver drawn, barked, "Stay put, all of you. To the suspects, their faces pale under the chandelier's harsh light, Lord Reginald Ashford's cane, the sapphire brooch, valued at thousands, marked for auction. A note in Lord Reginald's hand read, "Must be discreet." Poirot's pulse quickened. Mon Dieu, the motive emerges. He returned to the ballroom, where the suspects waited, their fatigue and fear palpable. Holding up the ledger page, he said, "Mes amis, Eleanor Gray's death was no accident, nor was Tom's. This ledger reveals a plan to sell the sapphire brooch, a plan Eleanor discovered. Who among you feared her knowledge?" The room tensed, eyes darting. Lord Reginald's voice was sharp. "That's private, Poirot. You've no right." But his cane shook, betraying guilt. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Your debts, my lord, are known. The brooch was your salvation, no?" Poirot paced, his voice steady, commanding attention. "Let us unravel this tapestry of deceit. Eleanor Gray, a maid, was no mere servant. She was observant, curious, and she was Lady Beatrice's niece, hidden to protect a family scandal." Beatrice gasped, her pearls falling silent as tears welled. "It's true," she whispered. "My sister's child, born out of wedlock. I brought her here, gave her a place, to keep her close." Poirot nodded, his gray cells aligning. Eleanor knew of the brooch's sale, a secret that threatened the manor's honor. He turned to the clues, laying them bare. The locket, found in the stables, showed Eleanor with Victor Crane, her lover. The note, "Victor, we must tell the truth," suggested she planned to expose the sale. The burned letter, "Meet me, midnight, trust no one," was her plan to confront the culprit. The bloodied knife, the glove, the brooch in the garden, all red herrings, planted to mislead. The suspects shifted, their masks slipping under Poirot's scrutiny. He addressed Victor. "Monsieur Crane, you loved Eleanor, oui? You hid the locket and box to protect her secrets, but your muddy shoes place you everywhere. Discreet, oui?" Beatrice's voice broke. "I wanted to protect her, the manor. I didn't know she'd die." Poirot nodded, sensing her sincerity but noting her perfume's presence on every clue. A coincidence or design? Finally, he faced Lord Reginald. "My lord, your debts drove you to sell the brooch. Eleanor overheard your plans, threatened to expose you. You poisoned her wine with cyanide, obtained from a hunting supplier, disguised as pest control, none?" Reginald's face reddened. "Preposterous! I've no such poison!" Poirot held up the ledger. "This proves your motive. And Tom, he saw you hide the brooch in the garden, oui? So you bludgeoned him with the rake." Poirot paced, reconstructing the crime. "Eleanor served wine that night, but you, my lord, slipped cyanide into her glass. A precise act, unnoticed in the bustle. The shattered glass, the bloodied knife, the glove, all distractions to point to others. The brooch placed in the garden was to suggest theft. The burned vial hid the poison's source, but a trace remained in your study, on a rag stained with wine." He produced the rag found among the study's papers, its faint almond scent damning. Reginald's cane clattered to the floor. "You can't prove this!" he roared, but his eyes betrayed panic. Poirot's voice was calm, relentless. "The wine stain on your cuff, my lord, matches Eleanor's apron. The cyanide trace in your study, the ledger, the footprint in the dust, all point to you. Tom saw you in the garden, so he had to die. You broke the study window to stage a break-in, scattering papers to hide the ledger. But the little gray cells, they see all. Beatrice sobbed, clutching her pearls. Reginald, is it true? Reginald's shoulders slumped, his authority crumbling. I had no choice, he whispered. The manor was bankrupt. Eleanor threatened to tell the world, ruin us. I only meant to silence her, not this. His confession hung heavy, the ballroom's opulence mocking his fall. Poirot turned to Jap. Inspector, arrest Lord Ash. Did again, Poirot. How'd you know? Poirot's smile was faint. The little gray cells, mon ami. They never fail. He glanced back at the manor, its secrets laid bare, and walked toward his car. Another mystery solved.